Quake measuring 4 hits national capital.
अभी जब भूकंप आया था तो बहुत तेज का था, 1-2 सेकंड का था, पर बहुत तेज था। हमारे घर की सारी अलमारियां, फ्रिज वगैरह सब हिलने लगा।
मैंने देखा कि झूमर जो बाहर वाला हॉल वाला झूमर था वो हिल रहा था। मैं तुरंत उठा, अपने बीवी बच्चों को लेकर के, मम्मी पापा को लेकर के घर के बाहर आया।
भैया बहुत तगड़ा झटका था, हमें ऐसा लगा जैसे ट्रेन चल रही हो ना, धरती ऐसे हिल रही बहुत तेज।
Epicenter in Delhi, 5 kilometer depth. Delhi jolted like never before. Is Delhi prepared if an earthquake strikes? How did quake strike heart of Delhi? Should Delhi brace for more quakes? Delhi quake scare. That is our top focus on 6 p.m. Prime. Hello and welcome. Good evening. You're watching 6 p.m. Prime here on India Today. I'm Akshata Anandagopal, and this evening we're talking about how the people of Delhi were literally jolted out of their sleep, courtesy of 4.0 magnitude earthquake that hit the national capital. Not new to have tremors in Delhi, but the fact that the epicenter was right in the heart of the national capital in Dhola Kuan, very close to the airport, that's what's triggered a lot of worry, and also the impact of the quake felt in parts of the national capital region, not just Delhi, but also parts of Noida, Greater Noida, Ghaziabad. All of them felt the impact of this quake. There are some worrying questions now that are coming up repeatedly. Is this a worrying sign of things that are to come in the national capital? Delhi falls in a seismic activity zone. So are we going to be seeing more earthquakes? Is there any way we can predict it? How do we safeguard ourselves? I'm going to be talking about that. We're getting experts on our show to break those details down for you. First, as always, let's begin. At 5:36 this morning, most of us who live in Delhi in the national capital region woke up to a 4.0 magnitude earthquake striking the heart of the national capital. Many of us who live in Delhi have felt these tremors before, but this one felt a little different from the others simply because of the intensity. The reason for that was because, of course, the epicenter was in Delhi, and second, the depth of the quake. It did lead to widespread panic among residents who are now asking, what next? Does this mean that more is coming Delhi's way? Should we brace for more quakes, more tremors? We'll first tell you what happened today and then decode that with experts.
People rushing out of their homes in fear. Early morning panic in the national capital region. These were the scenes witnessed across Delhi and the NCR in the early hours of February 17. A magnitude 4 earthquake hit the NCR with its epicenter in Delhi, which is unprecedented. The epicenter was near South Delhi's Dhola Kuan area.
We felt the earthquake around early morning in the 5:30, and we came out of the room. And we planned to see the gate today. We came here. So we may feel another earthquake or something like that, so we came here.
The tremors were felt not just in the capital, but also in adjoining areas like Noida, Greater Noida and Ghaziabad. Fortunately, no damage or injuries were reported despite strong tremors that shook the NCR this morning.
This is the epicenter in Dhola Kuan area. At the epicenter, when the measurement was taken by the seismology department, that says that 5 kilometers below the Earth's surface, this was the epicenter. And this is area, the radiusly, this is the area which was the epicenter of this tremor. First time perhaps that anyone could recall that Delhi, the national capital, was being epicenter of such a strong tremor.
जो अर्थक्वेक हुआ है वो धौला कुआं में हुआ है, जो आपका जो झील पार्क है, और 2007 में 4.6 मैग्नीट्यूड का अर्थक्वेक वहां पर हुआ था. तो इसलिए ये बहुत से अर्थक्वेक 420 अर्थक्वेक 1990 से उस जोन में हो रहा है, और इसलिए इसे कोई नई, इसमें कोई घबराने का नहीं है, ये सेस्मोजेनिक जोन है.
Seismologists say there are multiple reasons for the strong tremors in Delhi and the NCR. Firstly, the epicenter was in South Delhi, and that too at a depth of 5 kilometers. Delhi is prone to earthquakes, and the urban structure is an added factor. Another reason, according to experts, is the soft alluvial soil in the region. Prime Minister Narendra Modi urged people to remain calm and stay alert for possible aftershocks. Delhi and other parts of northern India often experience tremors due to earthquakes in the Himalayan region, but the epicenter being Delhi this time triggered an alarm. With Ashutosh Mishra in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
So many questions right now loom over this one incident that's been reported in Delhi. And we're going to address some of your questions, queries about the earthquake that struck the National Capital Region. Joining us here on this broadcast is Mr. A.K. Shukla, former head of the National Center for Seismology. So there's no better name to really answer all of your queries. Thank you, Mr. Shukla, for your time. A couple of questions really that have been asked, particularly about the incident that happened this morning. First, is how was the epicenter actually in Delhi? Is that unprecedented? Has that happened before, sir?
Yeah, Delhi, because as you know, Delhi is in seismic zone 4. We have divided the country in 4 zones, zone 2, 3, 4 and 5. 5 is the highest zone, high intensity zone, and then the 4. So the geological structure of Delhi is such that such type of earthquake, even up to magnitude, you can say up to 6 magnitude, can produce these fault systems. These are the fault systems, and these are created because of the movement of our Indian plate to the colliding with the Eurasian plate. So this is the basic reason. So we cannot say that it is a unusual phenomena has happened in this Delhi. Okay. There were centers in this area earlier also, and about, as Dr. Mishra has told, it was recorded at more than 4.5 magnitude earthquake in this area. So it's not too very.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Shukla, you know, one of the questions that everyone's talking about who lives in Delhi and in the National Capital Region is that this quake felt more powerful than usual. Is that really the case? Why so, if yes? Why did this feel more powerful?
Yeah. It's looked like powerful because as the energy when generated on the basis of earthquake, the energy generated travel in the form of waves. So these are the 2 types of wave. One is the primary wave, where the earthquake travel, just giving the jerk. And the second wave, this is not very dangerous. This type of wave is not dangerous. And then comes the secondary wave. This is sinusoidal wave. So the earth so in this wave. So this wave is analogous to the sound wave. So when this first primary wave has come, so this creates the sound. And of course, because the depth is very shallow, about 5 kilometers, so a lot of noise has taken place, and really it was a little surprising. Not surprising, but yes, it was felt by the people, heard by the people, and it's created panic. But that need not to. This is not a matter of panic. We should not worried about this.
Okay,
this
so
is
nothing unusual, but understandable, of course, that there was a certain sense of fear with the sound that came along with these tremors. The other question that constantly comes up, Mr. Shukla, about this incident and overall, really, the fact that Delhi is in Zone 4, which means that there is a possibility and a risk of quakes, as you told us, is whether Delhi is actually prepared if an earthquake strikes. How prepared are we, urban infrastructure-wise? Do you think that every step of planning has been done, keeping in mind that Delhi, the national capital, is in fact in risk of a quake?
It's $1 million question. To prepare, when we are asking, we are saying that it's whether we are prepared, means there are 2 ways, post-earthquake and after the earthquake. After earthquake, yes, we are fully prepared. We have NDMRS, SDMRF. Means this 2 types of these force are there, and really they are very much equipped and they are reaching in a very time. We have seen in Sikkim earthquake within 1.5 days they have reached. So this is the post-earthquake scenario. We are very well able to manage. But the pre-earthquake means we have to create our houses, we have to construct our houses as per the building code. Building code, when we are saying, means whether these buildings will be able to tolerate the force generated by the earthquake. So it is for this we have the code. We have BIS has prepared the code for different zone, different type of buildings are to be constructed depending upon the force of the seismicity experience, force of the earthquake experience in these zones. So if you talk about Delhi, we always listen that most of the buildings are not as per this one, even not as per the building code. Even in the code, the matter went to the court, in Supreme Court, and official statement that 90% buildings are not sure that they are the earthquake resistant. So it's very difficult to say. Yes, the new construction we should assume, because 10-15 years from 10-15 years we are really able to understand the earthquake. People has
I
also
think what
understand
that essentially means, Mr. Shukla, from what you're telling us, I could be wrong, which is that actually the high-rises seem to be complying more because they've come up of late, which means that they've also kept it in mind and ensured that certain precautions are taken. It's the older buildings that are very concerning, because not just are they old infrastructure, but also not updated with the latest codes and perhaps not really safe in case an earthquake strikes. But Mr. Shukla, with this one incident that's been reported today with the epicenter in Delhi, do we anticipate more earthquakes in the capital?
Not because of this particular earthquake. We cannot say that earthquake will not come in future, but because of generally what happens when large earthquake occurs, so aftershock follows. So for this earthquake, we can say that there will not be any earthquake because of this earthquake. Separate earthquake at separate place, at separate epicenter may be happen, but this earthquake is not probably not able to generate the aftershock. So we should not worry about this incident. But yes, it can come at any time, and we should be careful. We should take precaution. We should be ready for this one. As you have told about the building, we should be ready for this one, and other things which are required for this earthquake disaster
management. My final question to you, Mr. Shukla, is, you've been speaking about ensuring that we take preventive, precautionary steps rather. Is there any way we can actually predict if an earthquake is about to strike? Are there any telltale signs?
No, we cannot predict, not anywhere in world. No country can predict the earthquake in a very advanced. Yes, China has tried and they predict the one earthquake, but fail to the other earthquake. Means every earthquake has their own structure, the way of formation of the energy, etc. But yes, there is alert system. Our Honorable Prime Minister has in some function told that we should do something about the early warning system. So in case of earthquake, early warning, when we are saying, so it's a very, as I have told, that these are the primary wave and secondary wave. So the nature is different, speed is different. So taking care of these speed, we can give a warning of a few seconds. Suppose some earthquake has occurred in the Himalaya, and so the energy, which is destructive energy, may take few seconds or 40-50 seconds to Delhi. So in this 50 seconds, and the first wave, P wave, as I have sent, we have discussed already. So that P wave, if you can send through the VSAT immediately, so it will take about 40 seconds to the other wave, which can destruct the house. So we can get the warning of 40 seconds. So this is
hardly any time. That's hardly any time to actually do anything or even react for that matter.
No. 40 seconds is quite enough. If you can get the warning of 40 seconds, you can come out from your house. Because only thing is that you come out from your structure. If it is not safe, you come out from the structure. So 40 seconds at least in first or second, third floor, you can come out from.
No, but how will you spread the word so fast, Mr. Shukla? How will everyone know that this is coming in a matter of 40 seconds? How do you ensure that people know?
Yeah. That is the thing. That is early warning system. We have to generate the system. We have to communicate properly. Communication system has to develop, and probably because of this Prime Minister's instruction, and in a few years, in a few months or years, we will be able to get such type of structure.
We certainly hope so, We certainly hope so. Mr. Shukla, thank you very much for joining us, answering all of our queries. I'm sure you've put a lot of minds at ease right now with the details and expert opinion that you have given us on this broadcast about what to expect in the days, weeks and months to come in Delhi. Thank you very much. Now, one point that constantly comes up about Delhi is that it's simply not prepared for earthquakes, despite falling in zone 4, which means that there is a high risk of quakes. There's very little as far as urban infrastructure goes to ensure that buildings don't come crashing down, which is the most basic step you can do to ensure that lives are not at stake, that you don't see maximum casualties if there is a quake. And let me just take you through some of the data. Surveys conducted have shown that in Delhi, 6.5% of buildings are at high damage risk. That may seem like a small number. Let me show you the next page, because that is extremely worrying. 85.5% buildings in Delhi, in the national capital, are at moderate damage risk. Moderate at, let's say, an earthquake that hits above 5 on the Richter scale could cause sizable damage, especially for those who are living inside that particular building. Now, new construction buildings that have come up in Delhi or even in the national capital region like Noida, Ghaziabad, are built to withstand a 7.5 strong earthquake. So if you live in a high-rise and you're thinking that, look, because I'm in a high-rise, I'm at greater risk, look at really the building code. Speak to the builder, find out from them whether your building is quake resistant. Chances are that if it was built in the last 10 to 15 years when there was more awareness and building codes came in, which were a lot more stricter, chances are that it can actually withstand an earthquake. So there's no reason to panic whatsoever, but important to check if your building is earthquake proof or not. Let's also tell you about the zones in the country that are prone to earthquakes. There are a couple of zones here. There's Zone 2, Zone 3, Zone 4 and Zone 5. Zone 2 is the low-risk zone. This is where earthquakes do not exceed a magnitude of 4.9 and very rarely actually occur. Most of the south, you will see that it's not really prone to earthquakes because they're far away from the Himalayas, so they're not really part of those tectonic plates. Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh fall in this particular category of Zone 2, which means there's very, very small chance really of an earthquake happening here. Zone 3, moderate risk. Now here, if an earthquake strikes, the magnitude could be between 5 and 6. Now remember that what we're talking about is extreme scenarios here. It doesn't mean that if an earthquake strikes, it will vary in this magnitude. Places like Mumbai, Pune, Andhra Pradesh and Odisha fall in this category. Again, let me highlight that there is only a moderate risk of earthquakes. You very rarely hear of quakes or tremors being felt in these parts. Zone 4. Here's where it gets risky. There is a high risk of an earthquake. Delhi falls in this particular zone. So most of the areas close to the Himalayas, we're talking about Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, they all fall in Zone 4. So here the magnitude could vary between 6 to 6.9. Again, I'm reiterating that this is in extreme conditions, the worst that could hit really as far as an earthquake goes. Zone 5, extreme, very high risk. Now, this is the most seismically active zone, and there are parts of India that actually fall in this category too. Assam, Nagaland, most of your northeastern states fall here. There's also Gujarat's run of Kutch. Remember the Bhuj earthquake that took place in 2001. These are areas where you could see a lot more heightened seismic activity. So these are the most risky areas where steps are being taken to ensure that it's also more, prepared if an earthquake strikes. Let's get you details now of the meeting that's taken place to decide who the next Chief Election Commissioner will be. The meeting happened at the PMO. Leader of Opposition Rahul Gandhi was present, Prime Minister Modi was there, and Union Minister Amit Shah were present for this particular meeting. Remember, it's a 3-member panel that decides who will be the next Chief Election Commissioner. The current Election Commissioner, Rajiv Kumar, retires tomorrow, so we are expecting an announcement very, very soon. Okay, at this point, we know that the meeting has come to an end. It took place at the PMO. Prime Minister Modi was there. Home Minister Amit Shah, because part of the panel is one union minister, in this case, Home Minister Amit Shah. We also had Leader of Opposition Rahul Gandhi attending the meet, as is the norm. So all of them coming together to be a part of this panel that will decide who will be the new CEC. Now, a front runner, in fact, is expected to be Gyanesh Kumar, who is the senior most official right now at the Election Commission. So he is touted to be the front runner to succeed Mr. Rajiv Kumar as the Chief Election Commissioner. remember that this is a case that's been going on in the Supreme Court over who really should be deciding the CEC. And there was a panel that was set up by the Supreme Court which also had the Chief Justice of India. The government then brought in a law to replace that particular panel composition. And instead of the CGI, a union minister has been made a part of this panel. This is interestingly a case that also comes up in just 2 days from now in the Supreme Court over the composition of this panel and the centre's law that was brought in. Rahul Gautam is joining us with more details on this. Rahul, as we get those images of the leadership part of the CEC panel leaving after the meeting, any details of when we can expect an announcement? Is it going to come in today?
Well, Akshita, this meeting began around 5:30 at PMO. Lok Sabha LOP Rahul Gandhi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah, all three were present during this important meeting to decide upon who's going to be the next Chief Election Commissioner. We've been informed from our sources that in all likelihood Rahul Gandhi has given a dissent note on the selection process, saying that the process was biased and due names or those names should have been considered were not considered by the committee. In the meantime, we can expect that shortly from now a press conference will be organized by Congress Party on this issue, and you can expect that in a day or two we would all be knowing as to who is going to be the next Chief Election Commissioner. But as far as
you're telling us about the Congress objecting, Rahul Gandhi, you're telling us as the leader of opposition is going to issue a dissent note. Is he not in agreement with the panel composition?
Well, absolutely, yeah. This is what sources are indicating to us, that Rahul Gandhi has given a dissent note on the entire exercise of selecting the next Chief Election Commissioner. In fact, if you remember earlier also when the NHRC chairperson and the other members were supposed to be appointed, at that point of time also Rahul Gandhi gave a dissent note, not just Rahul Gandhi, in fact Mallikarjun Kharge, LOP, Rajya Sabha, they both gave dissent notes. And this time around also Congress sources are indicating to us that Rahul Gandhi has objected to the entire process, saying that it was biased from the very beginning, and the name should have been considered for this topmost post were not considered by the selection committee.
Considering that the Congress and Rahul Gandhi is, of course, focused a lot of the attacks on the Election Commission and how they function. Thanks very much, Rahul, for those details. Let's cut across to more breaking news coming up. In 3 days from now, on February 20th, Delhi will get a new Chief Minister, and the oath-taking preparations are on in full swing. Ramlila Maidan is where, in fact, the swearing-in will happen. Now, what we're hearing about the swearing-in ceremony is that the BJP's top brass, Prime Minister Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah will be there. But not just that, you will see NDA Chief Ministers all coming together for the oath ceremony. The Chief Ministers of 20 states will be there for the swearing-in ceremony. So it's going to be a big NDA show of strength that will happen in the national capital. Now, what we're hearing, sources telling us that the Ambanis, Adanis, other industrialists have all been invited. Spiritual leaders, farmers have also been invited. So this is going to be a big bang event that takes place in the heart of the national capital at the Ramlila Maidan. Piyush Mishra is joining us with more details on this. Piyush, a grand affair being planned by the BJP along the lines, I think, of what happened also in Maharashtra, where you're going to see the biggest names of the country coming together for the swearing-in ceremony.
Well, absolutely, Akshita. What we are now hearing is that BJP is planning for a mega mega oath-taking ceremony in which top leaders, not only from the BJP but also from NDA, will participate, which includes Chandrababu Naidu, Nitish Kumar, and other parts of NDA. They will be present in that oath-taking ceremony, which is also to take place on 20th of February at 4:30 p.m. Before that, the BJP's legislative party meet will also take place on 19th of February. For that, the preparation preparations are underway. Let me also straight away try to show you pictures from right outside the BJP headquarters. You can also see the colorful lights right in front of this office, and we have never seen this jostling atmosphere here. The positive atmosphere here. Workers are trickling in day and night, and they are also very excited to know that yes, oath-taking ceremony is also to take place on 20th of this month, and they will have their own chief minister in the state. And for that, what we're also told is that people from business fraternity, from Bollywood and sports could also be invited. So it's going to be a mega show on 20th of February at 4:30 p.m. when BJP's chief minister will take place, because BJP has, achieved a good number of seats. It's a historical
and they want to celebrate it. They want to celebrate that they're coming back to power in Delhi after 2.5 decades. So you can expect a big show of strength by not just the BJP but the NDA in Delhi. Thanks, Piyush, for joining us with those details. And sticking to news from Delhi, everyone's of course been talking about that tragic stampede that broke out at the New Delhi railway station on Saturday. 18 people died as a result of mismanagement and the sheer chaos that broke out at the railway station, again involving the crowds gathered for the Mahakumbh. Now, 2 days on, the central government has swung into action, putting forth a slew of steps to ensure that there's no repeat of the stampede. But obviously the question that will be asked is, why wasn't this done earlier, when the government knew that there were unprecedented crowds gathering at railway stations headed to the Kumbh?
The deadly New Delhi railway station tragedy jolting the government into action. Centre has introduced a new AI-managed crowd control plan, including the creation of permanent holding zones at 60 high-traffic stations. The AI-backed tech innovation will be used to monitor crowd movement, especially during train delays.
This is the 16-number platform. Most of the special trains for Kumbh are on 16 number. So there has been an access control that has been designed to manage proper entry-exit flow to avoid any kind of stampede-like situation till the 26th.
The Saturday stampede occurred when a sea of passengers was confused by two trains with similar names.
There is a man marking that's been done by the RPF, where at every entry-exit point from the footover bridge, which is the staircase to the footover bridge, there is man marking that's been done.
Sale of platform tickets from counters at New Delhi has been discontinued till 26th of February. Meanwhile, SP Chief Akhilesh Yadav mocked Modi government, saying the Vishwa Guru can't safeguard poor passengers.
जो लोग ये कहते हैं कि हम $5 ट्रिलियन की इकोनॉमी बनाने जा रहे हैं, विकसित भारत बनाने जा रहे हैं, तीसरी अर्थव्यवस्था बन जाएंगे हम और विश्व गुरु बन जाएंगे, क्या यही परिभाषा है कि आप प्लेटफॉर्म पर हमारे जो गरीब लोग हैं उनको सुरक्षित नहीं रह सकते, उनका एक्सीडेंट हो जाए? दोनों सरकारों को मिलकर के जो मुआवजा देने की बात कहेगी तो वो मुआवजा देना चाहिए, उनकी मदद करनी चाहिए.
The centre promised to probe if fake news and rumours sparked stampede.
देखिए, बहुत ही दुख की घटना है और हम इससे आहत है बहुत. हमारी पूरी सरकार आहत है. रेल मंत्रालय की तरफ से इसका इन्वेस्टिगेशन चल रहा है और इस इन्वेस्टिगेशन के बाद पता चलेगा कि इसमें कॉन्स्पिरेसी है क्या, कोई फेक न्यूज प्रोपागेट किया गया जिसके कारण ऐसा कुछ हुआ. इसके बारे में पूरी जानकारी ली जाएगी और इंक्वायरी होगी.
Can railway ensure 100% passenger safety among surging crowd of Mahakumbh devotees? Vishriya Chatterjee in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
The India's got latent controversy refusing to die down, as the Maharashtra Cyber Cell has now issued a second summon, will in fact issue a second summon to those who have skipped the first. 42 people have been summoned. 2 have recorded their statements so far. Now the Maharashtra Cyber Cell will kick off action against Ranveer Alabadia, aka Beer Bicep, Samay Raina, Apurva Mukhija, Ashish Chanchalani, Jaspreet Singh and many others. Now it's also possible, and this is the big breaking news that's coming in, the Maharashtra Cyber Cell is likely to issue an arrest warrant against the primary accused if they do not cooperate with the agencies and if they do not show up within the stipulated date. Essentially, an arrest warrant could go out against the main accused, which in this case is Ranveer Elabadia, as well as Samay Raina, the host of the show. The controversy refusing to die down and only, in fact, snowballing into more and more trouble for the accused. Divyesh Singh is joining us with more details. So on this, Divyesh, more trouble essentially for Elabadia, for Beer Biceps and Samay Raina. They could face arrest if they don't turn up before the agencies. So now what is the deadline by when they have to appear before the Maharashtra Cyber Cell?
Well, Samay Raina has been summoned on 18th of February, that is tomorrow. And
connection with Divyesh, but he was telling us that Samay Raina has been summoned tomorrow. If he doesn't turn up tomorrow, he could face an arrest warrant. Remember that Samay Raina, in his statement so far, has maintained that he is abroad. He's in America. So we'll have to see if he manages to come back tomorrow to be questioned by the Maharashtra Cyber Cell, who are cracking the whip and how against all of these accused, making it very clear that this case, for some reason, is priority number one for them. Okay, let's move on and talk about what's happening in Tamil Nadu, where again you're seeing a language controversy, this time over the national education policy, which the DMK very publicly has been vehemently against. Now, what's triggered this showdown is that the central government has made it clear that you toe the line on this particular policy if you want funds to come from that particular scheme, for that particular scheme. And so Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan has made it clear that this is nothing but a politically motivated move by the DMK to not implement the national education policy. The point of contention over the NEP that's happening in Tamil Nadu is over the three-language policy that's part of the NEP that speaks about the first language, which is English, second, which will be the first actually being a regional language, the second English, and the third a language of your choice, which could be Hindi as well. The DMK says we do not want a three-language policy, we want a two-language policy. And that's what's led to this showdown, as the central government has made it very clear they're not going to back down, that Tamil Nadu must implement NEP. M.K. Stalin, amid this, the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, has claimed that the centre is threatening to not release funds for Tamil Nadu if it does not implement the three-language policy.
NEP is the new aspirational common platform. Regarding language, I respect all the language. This NEP, envisioned by Honorable Prime Minister Modi, is giving emphasis to mother tongue. हम तो काशी तमिल, we are organizing Kashi Tamil Sangamam to encourage the Tamil civilization, Tamil culture and Tamil language. Tamil is one among the oldest language of our civilization. But what is wrong if a student in Tamil Nadu will learn multilingual, come to the multilingual aspect in his study? It can be Tamil, it can be English, it can be other Indian language. There is no imposition of any Hindi or any language on them. Some friends in Tamil Nadu are doing politics, but certainly Government of India is committed to implement NEP.
So what is your reaction to Dharmendra Pradhan's statement, sir?
Strongly condemn it. We will never accept the three-language policy. We will always stick to two-language policy.
So what is your reaction to Dharmendra Pradhan's statement, sir?
Strongly condemn it. We will never accept the three-language policy. We will always stick to two-language policy.
The future of 40 lakh students depends on this amount. And all of the sudden they are framing a reason like you have to include yourself, you have to sign the MOU like you are joining the PMC. This is the very first time in 2023 while we are in the urge of receiving the final installment. At the time they are telling better you sign this MOU for the PMC, then only we will release. So this is kind of a blackmail.
யாரும் எந்த மொழியும் படிக்கக்கூடாதுன்னு யாரும் சொன்னதில்லை. ஒரு மொழி திணிப்பு என்று வரும்பொழுதுதான் அதை எதிர்க்கிறோம். அதை தான் அவங்க புரிந்து கொள்ள வேண்டும். மொழியை ஒரு சாய்ஸா எடுத்து படிக்கிறதுக்கும் மொழியை திணிக்கப்படும் பொழுது வேறு வழி இல்லாமல் அதை படிக்க வேண்டிய அவசியம் ஏற்படும் போதும் இருக்கக்கூடிய வித்தியாசத்தை பிஜேபி இருக்கக்கூடிய எல்லாரும் புரிந்து கொள்ள வேண்டும். கேவியில பிஜேபி ஆட்சிக்கு வருவதற்கு முன்னால் ஜெர்மன் மொழி சொல்லிக் கொடுத்துருந்தாங்க. இவங்க ஆட்சி பொறுப்புக்கு வந்த பிறகு அந்த மொழியை எடுத்துட்டு சமஸ்கிருதம் படிக்கணும் அப்படின்னு சமஸ்கிருதம் திணிக்கப்பட்டது. சமஸ்கிருதம் படித்த பிள்ளைகளுக்கு என்ன பயன் இருக்க முடியும்னு நம்ம கேட்கலாம். ஆனா இப்படி மொழி திணிப்பு, ஆதிக்கத்தை திணிப்பு இதையெல்லாம் தொடர்ந்து ஒன்றிய அரசாங்கம் செய்து கொண்டிருக்கிறது. அதனாலதான் இந்த மொழி திணிப்பை, ஹிந்தி திணிப்பை எதிர்க்கிறது.
Okay, let's bring in Pramod Madhav, who's joining us live from Chennai with more details on this. Pramod, you've got this showdown over language, something that's not really new to Tamil Nadu. But is there any truth to the Tamil Nadu government's claim that now funds have been paused for Tamil Nadu as a result of them not being a part of and not agreeing to the three-language policy or to the NEP?
Akshita, this is where it all began. Almost like 7 days ago, there was an issue where the Chief Minister actually coined how the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan funds were released to certain states but not to Tamil Nadu, and for this Annamalai retaliated by calling the Chief Minister as a liar, for which the State Education Minister actually shared data claiming Gujarat and Uttar Pradesh have received the fund. And this is when Anbil Mahesh was the first person to say that like Tamil Nadu is being kind of blackmailed, that if Tamil Nadu needs to get Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, which is 2,140 crores for 2023 to 2024, Tamil Nadu government will have to go ahead and accept PM Shri, and this is where the NEP and three-language policy enters, and this is what actually the Tamil Nadu government is not ready to accept, and this is where Anbil Mahesh went ahead and called it as a blackmail. When this question was put forward to Dharmendra Pradhan, instead of giving an explanation as to what exactly happened, he was completely upset that Tamil Nadu government is still actually opposing NEP, and this is where he went ahead and said that this is the rule of the law, and if every other state is accepting it, why is not Tamil Nadu accepting it? And he claimed the DMK government is playing divisive politics. However, AIDMK has also taken the same stance, and just like you saw, even Udinidhi Stalin, the Deputy Chief Minister, has made it very clear that Tamil Nadu will not accept three-language policies, and it will only go ahead with two-language policy, Akshita.
All right, Pramod, thanks very much for joining us with those details. Clearly, this showdown is not going to stop anytime now, with the DMK putting their foot down and saying there's no way we'll agree to a three-language policy. Let's get you breaking news on the story. Now, the Tamil Nadu BJP chief Annamalai has lashed out at the DMK over the language war, accusing the DMK of depriving children from opportunities, saying government school children are being denied opportunities because of politics, because of this language fight. Let's listen in to what Annamalai said.
நான் யாரையும் எடுக்கல. திமுகவுடைய கடைக்கோடியில் இருக்கக்கூடிய கவுன்சிலர் வரைக்கும் குழந்தைங்க 3 மொழி படிக்கிறாங்க. பிரைவேட் ஸ்கூலுக்கு போறாங்க. படிக்கணும், ஏன்னா அவங்க படிக்கணுமா, வெளிநாட்டுக்கு போகணுமா, நல்லா சம்பாதிக்கணுமா. ஆனா அரசு பள்ளியிலே படிக்கக்கூடிய 52 லட்சம் மாணவர்கள் நாம் என்ன பண்ணணுங்க? ஒரு தலைப்பட்ட சமுதாயம் மேல் நோக்கி செல்லும். கல்வித்திறன் குறைவாக கொடுக்கப்பட்டு வளர்க்கப்பட்ட சமுதாயம் அவர்களுக்கு ஊழியம் செய்வதற்காக கீழ் நோக்கி செல்லும் அப்படிங்கறத தமிழ்நாட்டை தவிர எங்கேயுமே உதாரணம் இல்ல. முதலமைச்சர் வெட்கப்பட வேண்டும்.
Okay, we'll continue tracking those reactions. Big news in the real estate and infrastructure sector. Veka Germany, a global leader in UPVC profile systems, has strengthened its presence in India with a complete takeover. The company now holds 100% ownership after acquiring the remaining 50% stake from NCL and other shareholders. With this move, Veka reinforces its commitment to India's rapidly expanding construction and real estate sector. Since its inception in 2009, Veka has grown to become the country's largest producer of UPVC profiles for doors and windows, operating in over 130 cities and generating a revenue of 442 crore rupees in 2024 alone.
This is a consequent development of our engagement here in India, which started in the early 2000 years as Veka with an own subsidiary. But the big step was really coming with a joint venture in the context of NCL Veka. And now we have the chance to do the next step with the takeover of the remaining 50% shares. For us as a global group, India has a special meaning. This is the area with the highest potential. We have a lot of trust in that market. We have a lot of trust in our organization, and that was a reason really to go in with 100%. And now it's a starting point to grow up something very special, and we are very much looking forward to this region of the world.
And that's all we have time for in this edition of 6 p.m. Prime.